This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. It is great being back. It's nice having a week off to where I can do a lot of things around the house, but it's also good to be back. We are continuing our study in Nehemiah. We will be in Nehemiah chapter 5 today. I just want to do a quick recap on what we have looked at in Nehemiah. If you remember, we started off with Nehemiah being the cupbearer to the king. And a cupbearer is just that. He bears the king's cup and fills it up with the wine and keeps it full, whenever the king wants it. That's all he did. And he was a slave, of course. He had come from Jerusalem and was a slave to the king, the Persian king who had conquered Jerusalem. The next thing we saw is that he was informed about the state of Jerusalem. The walls were down, the gates were missing, and it really affected him. That was his hometown. That was, the holy city. And it bothered him that it was that way, to the point that he cried and he prayed to God for it. And he went to the king, and we see his organization skills. He figured out what he wanted to do. He needed a letter from the king so that he could travel down to Jerusalem, because, he was a slave and he wanted to make sure that he could do this work without being, arrested and killed or whatever. He also realized that he was going to need lumber. And so he got a letter from the king allowing him to be able to get lumber, to cut trees down from the king's forest, So he saw his organization skills. Then he goes to Jerusalem, and we see that he's builder. He organizes the building, and he gets not only the whole city, except for the nobles from Tico, but he gets the whole city involved, and the people from around the area to come together and take a section of the wall and rebuild it, and work on the gates and get them back up and to fortify the city. Then we see that he was a defender. The Samaritans, especially, we read, were wanting to come in and stop the building. And they were saying all kinds of things about it. And so he was a strategist, in that the people would have a hammer in one hand and a sword in the other to defend the city. But they continually built and got the city walls back up. And today we're going to see how he is a negotiator. Unfortunately, when there are times of struggle, after a hurricane, after a tornado, after an earthquake, whatever, people are in need of supplies. And unfortunately, those who have the supplies, the gas station, the grocery stores, the department stores or whatever, will double or triple the prices of items that people need to make more money. And of course, it's against the law to price gouge, but people still do it. But like I said, they want to make money off of people's problems. And we see this as we read through Nehemiah 5, that's what the rulers were doing. Starting in verse 1. Now there arose a great outcry of the people and of their wives against their Jewish brothers. For there were those who said, with our sons and our daughters we are many. So let us get grain, that we may eat and keep alive. There were also those who said, we are mortgaging our fields, our vineyards, and our houses to get grain because of the famine. So we see here that people are in need. There's a famine. Okay? They're trying to take care of their families. I don't know about you, but a lot of people sometimes struggle. Maybe because of loss of a job, maybe because they've moved into a new area or whatever, and they're in dire need of food. And that's what we see here because of what's going on. The people are needing food because of the famine. And they've mortgaged their fields and their vineyards and their houses to get this food. Whenever we are in that kind of a dire need, people are willing to do just about anything. They'll take any items they might have and try to pawn them off. Or maybe we don't have it anymore in Washington State, but there used to be those payday loans to where you could go in there with some pay stubs and they would loan you, kind of like a loan shark, They would loan you money for your pay, which again, you're losing the money to do that, but you needed it to get gas or money or, food, And so that's what we see here, is that these people are in dire need, that they're willing to put their kids out, to work, to get money. They're mortgaging their fields, which they need, but they're still doing that because they're in such dire needs. Verse 4. And there were those who said, we have borrowed money for the king's tax on our fields and our vineyards. Now our flesh is as the flesh of our brothers, and our sisters as their children. Yet we are forcing our sons and our daughters to be slaves, and some of our daughters have already been enslaved. But it is not in our power to help it, for other men have our fields and our vineyards. Because they've mortgaged their fields, they've sold their fields, trying to stay ahead, trying to take care of their families. And again, people are willing to do just about anything when it comes to taking care of their family, and their family in need, and the family are starving. And that's what we see here with the residents of Jerusalem. They're down. They're in the bottom. They've hit rock bottom. What are we going to do? What can we do? Going on in verse 6, I was very angry when I heard their outcry and these words. So it strikes Nehemiah of what the Jews are doing to their own Jews, their own family, their own brothers. And we've all heard, the comment or the slang, or however you want to put it, Jew them down, and that's something that, the Jews were noted for. And so here they are taking advantage of their own people to make money off their own people, price gouging, if you will, on their people who are in famine, who are down. They're no problem. They're having just all kinds of problems with their life, but they're willing to abuse them to make some money, and it makes Nehemiah mad. I took counsel with myself. Very important point here from Nehemiah. Whenever we are upset, whenever we are angry, whenever somebody, does something wrong, we should not go off cocked. That's a term, an old weapons term, when you had the hammer and you could half cock it and then pull it all the way back to fire it, but that half cock was dangerous because you could bump it and it go off accidentally. We need to stop, take a break, go outside, whatever, and calm down. Because if you went in all angry and mad, you're going to say things that you're going to later regret. You're going to say things that you probably shouldn't say. So he counseled himself. And I brought charges against the nobles and the officials. The people who are doing this, who are treating the Jews wrong, he went to them and brought charges against them. And I said to them, you are exacting interest each from his brother. And I held a great assembly against them. Doesn't say what this assembly was, if he brought the people together and had a town meeting, if you will. To bring it to the attention of these nobles and officials of what they are doing. They're not helping their people. They're bringing an extra burden down on them. Verse 8, and Nehemiah said to them, we, as far as we are able, have bought back our Jewish brothers. They bought them back, At first when I read that, I thought they brought them back. But no, Nehemiah has bought the Jewish slaves and brought them back home. Our Jewish brothers who have been sold to the nations. But you even sell your brothers that they may be sold to us. They were silent and could not find a word to say. That happens sometimes when you confront a bully. They shut up, they don't know what to do, they don't know what to say. So here Nehemiah is saying, look, you're selling your brothers and sisters into slavery, and I'm turning around and buying them back just so you can sell them again. You know, what is wrong with you? What did they have to say? Nothing. Nehemiah has called them out on it, and they realize it, and they have nothing else to say. Verse 9. So I said, the thing that you are doing is not good. Ought you not to walk in the fear of God? And again, this is a good, healthy fear that we as Christians should have towards God. I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, you know, there was times to where you could do something that you should not do. And I feared of getting caught. And so I wouldn't do it. I remember my dad telling me one time when I got of age, whatever that age was, before church, he says, you're at the age now that you can hold yourself. You don't have to get up during services and go to the bathroom. You go before, you can last an hour. You don't go, get up and go during services. He says, your sister didn't believe me when I told her that. And she got up and I followed her out. Oh, okay, put the fear in me. I never got up again, you know. But that's, you know, we need to have that fear of God, that good, healthy fear, that we don't do things that we as Christians should not do because of what's going to happen if we do it and we get caught outside of God. Ought you not to walk in the fear of our God, to prevent the taunts of the nations of our enemies? Okay, remember the Samaritans. They were taunting them. A couple of weeks ago, we read about that. That wall, they only got it halfway built. You know, a fox could walk across it and it's going to fall down. You know, the gates are squeaky, nothing's working, you know, trying to do whatever to bring Nehemiah and the Jews down from building the wall that they didn't want built. Okay? So here the Jews are trying to get their city back up to its former glory the best they can. But the Jewish people, the nobles and the rulers, are, you know, tearing them down internally by taking their land and selling them off and making money. You ought to fear our God. Verse 10, moreover, I and my brothers and my servants are lending them money and grain. Let us abandon this exacting of interest. So Nehemiah is doing everything he can. He's lending them money. Okay? No interest, I'm sure. And he's giving them grain to help the people. To help the people survive. To help the people to help themselves and get Jerusalem back up. Verse 11. Return to them this very day their fields, their vineyards, their olive orchards, and their houses, and the percentage of money, grain, wine, and oil that you have been exacting from them. Okay? So Nehemiah has not only gotten on to these nobles and these officials, but he's telling them what they need to do. Give it back. Give back their land. Give back their houses. Give back their vineyards. And the money. Make things right. Verse 12. Then they said, we will restore these and require nothing from them. We will do as you say. And I called the priest and made them swear to do as they had promised. Have you ever been to court? I'm sure you've seen it on TV. Before you get on the stand, somebody brings out the Bible and you put your hand on it, and I promise to say the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Okay? That's what Nehemiah has done here. He's brought in the priest and made them make this statement that what all they're going to do in front of the priest so they can be held accountable if they don't do it. Nehemiah is a shrewd negotiator. This cupbearer, is really coming out and doing what he needs to do to get Jerusalem back, to get the people back, and to build it up. You know, we as Christians need to do that with our brothers and sisters. We need to help them out when they are in trouble. And we'll look at that again in a few minutes. Verse 13. I also shook out the fold of my garment, okay, and said, so may God shake out every man from his house and from his labor who does not keep this promise. Now he's threatening them. Okay? If you don't do what you just promised in front of the priest and everybody to do, to give back everything, may God treat you as though what I have just done is getting the dust and the dirt out of my pants. May God do the same to you. And all the assembly said, Amen, and praised the Lord. And the people did as they had promised. Way to go, Nehemiah. Way to go. Not only has this cupbearer traveled the 800 miles and worked with everybody, brought them together as a family, and rebuilt the walls and the gates of Jerusalem, but he's also gone against the nobles and the officials and has brought the city back together, got rid of the yokes, the burdens that were on them, to where they were just, and we understand this, you know, you work so you can eat, so you can work, so you can sleep, so you can work, so you can pay your bills, so you can work, you know. He was able to get them out of that routine, that circle. And so they could become a great city again. The remaining verses in chapter 5 tells us of the generosity of Nehemiah against the Jews that he is helping. Verse 14, moreover, from the time that I was appointed to be their governor in the land of Judah. So he's moved up from just being somebody working, he's now the governor of Judah. For the 20th year, or from the 20th year. Now, if you go back to chapter 2, when this story started, it was the 20th year of the king at that time. Okay? So from the start, the 20th year, to the 32nd year of Artaxerxes, the king. 12 years. So this hasn't been a short period of time that Nehemiah has been down there. It's been 12 years. Okay? Neither I nor my brothers ate the food allowance of the governor. Now, what that food allowance is, in order for our government to run, okay, they exert taxes to pay for the government. If you live in a county or the state, you pay state taxes. You pay county taxes. You might pay city taxes, okay, to pay for all that they do, okay? And so what he's saying here is the governor, him, would normally apply tax to the people so that the government can run, so that he could eat, okay? So he could do his job. He did not get the food allowance for the governor. Verse 15, the former governors who were before me laid heavy burdens on the people and took from them for their daily ration 40 shekels of silver. Okay? So the past governors were taking 40 shekels of silver to pay for themselves so they could eat, the staff could eat and everything else. But he has not done that for the whole 12 years. Even their servants lorded it over the people. But I did not do so because of the fear of God. There's that fear again. He didn't come down there to make money. He did not come down there to make a burden on the Jews. So he's doing everything he can. We just read where he was giving them food and money and grain. Okay? And he's not taking taxes from them. He's taking care of himself. Now the remaining verses, I just read that. So the last verses today on chapter 5, we'll start in verse 16. I also persevered in the work on this wall, and we acquired no land, and all my servants were gathered there for the work. Okay? So he's down there, he's working, everybody in town is working, all the people are working, trying to get the city back up. Even his servants are out there doing their part and working. Verse 17, moreover, there were at my table 150 men, Jews, and officials, besides those who came to us from the nations that were around us. Now what was prepared at my expense for each day was 1 ox, 6 choice sheep and birds, and every 10 days all kinds of wine in abundance. So he's providing this feast to the people for 150 people a day out of his own pocket. Yet for all this, I did not demand the food allowance of the governor, because the service was too heavy on his people. He was more concerned about the people, about the Jews, than he was for himself and his servants. You know, sometimes we need to take that same attitude. You know, I've got plans this Saturday, but yet they're wanting to help me, you know, to help them move or whatever. Well, I need to get this done. I've been waiting to do it all week or all month, and, you know, now it's time. You know, sometimes we need to give of ourselves to help our brothers and sisters, to help our families. Yet for all this, I did not demand the food allowance of the governor, because the service was too heavy on the people. Verse 19, remember for my good, O my God, all that I have done for this people. Okay? Remember me, Lord. Remember what I have done for your people. What we have learned from the first 5 chapters of Nehemiah. First and foremost, we need to pray. We need to open ourselves to God in prayer and ask for help. Secondly, we need to recognize our God-given gifts and utilize them to the fullness in the service of our God. We can't be like the servant in the parable of the talents, which hid his talent from his masters and was punished for it. We must use our talents in the service of God. Thirdly, we must not allow people to hinder our work and our service to God. We must be willing to stand firm and do whatever it is that God has called us to do. Fourthly, we must be willing to stand up with our Christian brothers and sisters and support them in their endeavors. We must be there, shoulder to shoulder, helping each other in our struggles and our work for the Lord. Fifth, we need to stand together and fight the devil and his demons. We must fight constantly to stop Satan in his tracks and not let him win against what we are doing for God. The sixth thing is that we have learned is that we need to stop and pray for guidance before we open our mouth. In James 1:19, in James 19 we read to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Saying a prayer and asking for God's hand in the situation also helps it to go a long way in achieving this. And the eighth thing that we have learned from Nehemiah is to take action to help our brothers and sisters. We are going to continue on our study. There'll be a couple of chapters that we will skip over, and I'll bring that up as we go through, because it's just a bunch of names and a bunch of numbers. But we're going to go through and see what else happens with Nehemiah. If there's any way that we can help you this morning in your walk with God, please let us know. Let us help you. Let us encourage you. Let us pray for you. Or if maybe you haven't put on Christ and you need to do that, we can take care of that sin problem today. Please let your wishes be known as together we stand and sing.